I don't know the mic. Yes, I think now it is on. So thank you very much. It's been a long day again. We're going to start soon with the session on sustainable water management for improved water, urban livability and resilience. So I'm going to give a little more time for some of us to join, but for those who are connected already online, we're going to start very soon. And so just a few more minutes, just a few minutes, then we can start. Okay, I think we can start. I hope that we'll have a more audience coming in. So today we like to actually talk about a little bit broader sort of urban resilience, but also importantly looking at how planning and other instruments can help us to make best use of our natural assets, water. Designing our urban environments and our cities to become more resilient, more livable, and improving living conditions. So at GEOPA sites, we are interested to engage more also with utilities to look at the broader picture, broader urban issues, how the urban systems are sort of designed and is growing and is developing, bringing UN Habitat expertise also on board and partners expertise on board to actually support utilities to engage on more resilience discussion by looking at basically the infrastructure planning, financing, by looking at thinking a little bit beyond drinking water and wastewater management, but also looking at how we can actually build green infrastructure to support the city's resilience and livability. So that's of course is really it's sort of like intention that we will see how this can be attached to the water operator partnership practice and to what extent we can able to actually support utilities to also look at those aspects. So I hope this session today will provide us some sort of like entry points and also will help us to rethink broader issues within the urban ecosystems, not only on build-up area, but also sort of like nature and how the water can be used as a catalytic to actually facilitate those discussions. So I'm not going to speak more because we have four very good presenter, very interesting topics. They're going to actually, I'll be introducing them as they come, and then we will dive through the topic and to see how best we can address this. And I will be asking our distinguished speakers to keep their time for 15 minutes so that we have actually also at least 30 minutes for question and some discussion here. And I also invite online participants to put their comments and questions in the chat. So if we have a time, so we'll be also happy to look at what comes out from the chat, so we'll be also monitoring that one. So with that, I'd like to hand over mic to Dan Vienastra. He's working with urban planning consulting group in Netherlands with the Dutch acronym DTNP. He's going to take us through the resilient cities, creating resilient cities perspective of the Dutch cities, which we, of course, I think most of us will agree, we can't think of Dutch city without the water aspects, how it's been planned within the city. So I'll invite you, Dan.
So this one works. Let's see if this works.
Maybe if you can.
Yeah, okay, right. I'm not that used to presenting with a microphone, but I'll get used to it during this. Thanks for having me, Emra, as well. I really like this different environment where I'm in, because normally I'm really working in the Netherlands, so this international perspective is also eye-opening for me, and especially also all the water technicalities. I learn a lot today as well, so that's nice. I'm going to talk about creating resilient cities. We are a company, Emra mentioned this already. We do urban design, urban planning, and urban geography. So we just are busy with creating urban spaces, and we're based in the Netherlands. So we're based in Nijmegen. It's it's a city of like 160,000 per people in the total of the city, and you can see already water plays a big role. So there's the River Waal. I think it's connecting to the River Rhine, which is here through Bonn. It flows immediately through the city center. So water is a big part in a lot of lives for Nijmegen, especially rowing, enjoying the waterfront. And in our work, we try to create nice urban places. So we're not really working that much with the technicalities of water, but we see a lot of opportunities with water. So this is also Nijmegen. We try to make places where you can sit at the water to enjoy a beer, for example. We need to have parks with water so people can meet each other in the city. And it's also important for us to see how people get there, for example, by public transport, by bicycle. So it's really urban design. But water plays an important role because, as you can see here, we can create nice places as much as we want, but we have to take into account how water works because, sometimes it has negative effects on the city. And when we don't address these effects in our work, then we're creating places with less value. And I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with this graphic. It looks really nice at the first glance, but it's the main reason we have to take water into account more and more when going to the city, because the global temperature is changing. And we're facing a serious global climate crisis. I think everyone will know this who is attending here. It's been addressed a lot of times in other presentations before. And what we see in our work is at times it gets wetter in the city, and this is the Netherlands 2 years ago. I think not a lot of people could imagine this. Floodings in the south of the Netherlands, due to heavy rainfall, and a lot of homes were damaged. And I think it really also opened a lot of people's eyes how climate change is seriously affecting our lives and our urban places. And at the same time, sometimes it gets hotter and drier. So a picture from Spain as well on a hot day. And also in the Netherlands, our perceptives change because, as you can see on the map, a part of the Netherlands is white because it got so hot that the normal rating system couldn't handle it anymore. So, we're really in new times and we have to find new ways to design the city. And currently, especially in the cities we work in, water is a problem because there's a lot of hard surfaces, there's a lot of impermeable surfaces. So water runs through the city a lot, but the city doesn't really absorb the water. And because of that, it's well, we have to deal with a lot of risks. So we already work together with water professionals who teach us about where are the risks of flooding. This is a project I did in another city in the Netherlands, where you can see that due to heavy rainfall, places start to get flooded. And we analyze this and we can use this because we can create more spaces in our designs for water, for green, so it helps. But for now we see that at the same place, they knew this problem was happening, but they created another parking space, almost the same. And they just found a technical solution for it. So they thought, well, let's see that we can make the water run away quicker. This is definitely a solution, but I think it shows as well how we as designers and as water engineers not always work together, because when we would have involved or we would have known, maybe we would have gotten also more green space. And well, this is a big problem we as designers have and you as engineers for water have. We probably are used to seeing it in our own cubicle a little bit. However, we can provide each other with a lot of valuable information to work together to create more added value and to really sit at the table together with the designers, with the urban water managers and all these other parties who are all here mostly also at Guopa. So I will take you through a little bit of the solutions we are working on. It's really an urban design perspective, so it's not like the technical solutions we also hear a lot about, which is really nice as well. And well, it focuses on Netherlands and the temperate climate, because we are not working in Africa, for example, but I hope the next speakers will address this a little bit more. So towards green and resilient cities. So when we see the city, we really want to make sure it becomes more of a sponge city. So instead of creating all these hard surfaces, we want to absorb the water into the city, because it helps the city become more green and it makes the city really much more resilient. And at the same time, it gets more attractive as well. So you can see a tower. Well, we all know a lot of big towers in our own cities, but with all the green, it immediately gets more attractive. And also green walls and a place for water really makes the city more resilient and at the same time more attractive. And so in our work, we really try to go from this gray infrastructure, these hard cities, to more soft cities, where like also facades of buildings can be green and they can absorb water as well, which may also help urban water managers to address their problems, because water can be held more locally instead of flowing away in sewage. And it also means moving to differently and maybe providing a little less space for the car and hardened surfaces, but more for green and trees, which also help provide shades during the hotter days. And well, these kind of pictures are showing that it's really as much an attractive city as it's a more resilient city when you think about this green and blue infrastructure. And water can really help create better urban spaces. So we already try to make more room for water to just be absorbed into the ground more easily and like not just flowing it away. But you can combine it as well with places to play for kids, for example. So at times this whole place is underwater, but a lot of times it's just a place for kids to have fun just outside of their home, and it addresses climate change problems and heavy rainfall in the same way. And well, green cities, they are just more enjoyable and healthier. So it's really important that we, or as everyone who's here, we try to keep the water in the city so it gets more green. So it's green reduces stress, it invites for movement, it creates shades on the hotter days, so that's also really important. And maybe it can even create urban farming. So there's all kinds of advantages for trying to connect water and green in the city to become more attractive. Also because water in itself doesn't really directly cool the city. It's like really big bodies of water like this. They cool the body of water itself, but next to it, it still remains hot when it's really like a paved surface. So we really should try to get more of these green and blue networks into the city. And we, as urban designers, we really try to focus on the existing green and blue networks and take them as a starting point for our design instead of just designing over them. And just starting over. And it makes the city more attractive too, as you can just run next to the water, or you can walk, or it can, like in Paris, where people are bicycling next to the Seine. These kind of things are really a lot of positives to the city. And for that you have to move in a different way as well. So in Utrecht recently they also made this green and blue network, this single, they gave it back to the city, but for a long time it was a place for cars. So they put the water underground and they said we have to make sure cars can come here. So, well, the picture on the right is how it was. It's not a really resilient city, and it's not an attractive city as well. So it's also about moving in a different way, going for public transport, for bicycling instead of cars, because it takes a lot of space and a lot of hardened surfaces, well, which has no further benefits for the city. And apart from water and green, is also water can just be fun in itself. So we, as designers, we also like to play with water in the city because it can be fun. It can help kids enjoy their space in the city who don't have a garden for themselves, for example. And sometimes we need to find solutions also during the heavier rain. But you can design them in a nice way as well. So here you have a space. People love hanging out here. It's in Rotterdam, and it's close to a university. So it's a real social space. But when it's needed, it's a reservoir for rainwater. So it can fill all the way to the top, and it helps the city hold water and also help the green places around this square to have their water. So it's not only just about finding technical solutions, but it's about talking together and see what is the problem we have, how can we solve this, and how can we design it together with the information we have to have a positive impact on the inhabitants. So in summary, water is crucial for building climate resilient cities. We see this in our practice every day, and in a rapidly urbanizing world, I think cities are now maybe sometimes part of the problem because of all the hardened surfaces, because of the lack of green, but they can really be part of the solution when we try to build more towards these green sponge cities, which absorb the water locally, which hold it, and make sure the city is cooler. The inhabitants are happier because they have a lot of green around, and it invites for movement, so it's also a healthier city. And for that, in some teamwork is really needed. So we need to talk together with each other. We have to make sure we are aware of the problems from water, and we have to understand how the water flows are going, but also talk maybe to academia who can find new solutions, and eventually the community. We try to make places for the people who live there, so we need to involve them as well, and then we can really create more added value together instead of just looking at our own problems and solving them separately. And I want to end with a project from my own hometown, it's Nijmegen, and 15 years ago we had like a big problem with this river because it couldn't really handle the peak of rainfall for a lot of time. So it flooded a lot, and well, you can see it's close to the city center, so it's already where people also want to shop and want to hang out. So they had to come up with a solution, and instead of just broadening the river or finding just a solution that the river could handle more water, they started designing and talking to the communities as well and tried to solve it together, and they came up with an idea to make a little extra river. We call it a mirror river in Nijmegen. So it's an extra river to handle all the flow of water on heavy rainfall. but as well it creates an island in the city, and in this island we designed a new place in the city. It's a green place, and people could talk as well together with the designers what it should be. And now we're in a situation where it's finished for a few years, and well, it shows it's really contributed a lot to the city. It made a greener city, a happier city, and as well a more resilient city, because it is also fine on heavy rainfall days that it overflows. It's designed that way, so it's fine that the paths are overflowing as well. They can handle that. But when it's not the case, well, it's really a place where all the inhabitants of Nijmegen, they really love it. It's like become one of the most favorite places in the city. Well, you can see it here. It's just more fun city, and together with the technical solutions, with the urban design solutions, and with the local community, they really addressed the problem in a way that added way more value than we could have imagined before. Thank you. That's what I had to say.
Thank you, Dan. You went a little bit outside of your time, but thanks a lot for really showing very interesting opportunities with the water one could do, and also connecting with the public space, climate change, and all those resilience building. And I really like the way you sort of say we need to take into account how water works, and also go outside of our cubicle sort of zones to really collaborate to actually make best use of that. So I'll stop here. And I'd like to invite our next speaker, presenter, Dorothy Spohler. Yes, you're okay. Dorothy works with the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technology, EWAC, and she works on and helping to develop a lot of decision support tools, and she's going to present one of those to us, how we can address water issues. So.
Hello? Yeah, thanks. Dorothee Spohler, in case, but don't worry. That's my presentation up there, yeah. I'm going to present the urban water flow diagram, a visual tool to allow for concerted citywide planning for SDG 6 and enhanced resilience. A big title, but before that, I would like to kind of connect to my to the previous presenter, and I brought this picture here. It's a little bit small, I know. I don't know if you can recognize what it is, but it's actually the Swiss dashboard for measuring corona in wastewater. Nothing to do with the water flow diagram, but I brought this picture because in Switzerland, the story behind is interesting. In Switzerland, like many other places, we run into the pandemic with very little knowledge and a lot of directives from the government which were very little accepted because they were not well funded and they were not understood. And then later on, that's kind of the Switzerland cases in the left, and in the top right you have a headline where the Federal Council actually does not want general obligation of masks. That's kind of the typical example, because they said masks won't help and so on. So, but later on the private sector came in and measurement techniques were developed and vaccine were developed, and nowadays we have this fully fledged online monitoring system in wastewater treatment plants. And I brought that example because I think it's a perfect example for this teamwork. My colleagues at EWAC developed that, but together with the policymakers, the private sector, and the civil society at the end that has to understand that. And this teamwork example is actually a kind of what we also try to enable with the water flow diagram. So I'm a little bit the freak here. I'm an academic person like you're a private sector person. It's the freak show, I don't know. Anyway, I'm from EWAC. EWAC is the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technology, which has 12 departments, many disciplines, but all around water. And I'm in one department which is called Sanitation, Solid Waste and Water. So we are the only department that has an integrated approach, because we believe we have to look at sanitation, solid waste and water in an integrated way to kind of use opportunities and jointly manage challenges. So AOR, I'm coming kind of, we have an integrated approach, and we also work very transdisciplinary. So we want to really engage in this close collaboration with practice, policy, and civil society. So in Switzerland, we have the chance, oh no, another slide, yeah. So we also focus on urban areas, and urban areas, obviously, they bring a lot of challenges, but also opportunities when it comes to SDG 6, and many of them have been mentioned yesterday evening, already by Carla, now by you again. Challenges obviously include pollution or inequalities or heavy rainfalls, floods. Opportunities include non-potable reuse of water, spunk cities, and so on. So in Switzerland, we have the chance to have a very active community of practice, where people from academia, science, policy, and practice all come together and regularly have an exchange. And obviously for these people, this integrated approach is also relevant. So it was in a meeting where we sat together in 2020, and we were asking ourselves, well, can we develop a tool that enables that these different actors at the local level in our projects in development cooperation work closer together and have an integrated view at a city level, linking IWRM, the human right to water, sanitation, and so on. And that was kind of the initiation of this idea of this water flow diagram. So we took kind of the frameworks that were relevant for us, which is SDG 6, IWRM, the human right to water and sanitation, and got inspiration from visual tools. So at the right hand, you have the shit flow diagram. I think some people know that. In another session, other people knew it. Another example is the one water cycle from Japanese colleagues. We took this kind of concept and tried to develop the tool. The idea was that we have a tool that allows to describe what's happening, everything around water, to have kind of an understanding between different actors and sectors, and then kind of to jointly prioritize action. That was the idea behind. The result is the water flow diagram, and here is our first kind of case study that we did. This is the city of Bern, capital of Switzerland. Well, the water flow diagram has in the left hand these boxes. That's all the available water. And then you have a Sankei diagram which shows all the different sources, uses, treatment, uses, collection, and at the end, reuse or disposal. So what you see here, it also allows to give a judgment if something is an appropriate management or a problematic management. This water flow diagram in Switzerland, you would say, well, everything should be green, we're fine, but there are two things that are interesting. First of all the groundwater, that's the big box there left, is actually imported from outside the city, and that at the end left back to the river. So it's kind of a displacement of the water, and downstream, obviously, there are many more cities, and the flooding risk is there quite high. The other problem is the red line up there in Bern, actually the combined sewer overflow. So that's the water that goes into the river untreated because of heavy rainfall. It's much higher than in general in Switzerland, about 8%. So what is next? Why did the city of Bern develop that with us? The city of Bern is actually a blue community. So Blue Communities, it's a movement from Canada, but it has rolled out globally, and it's quite a vibrant community in Switzerland. The Blue Community is a self-declaration of a city or an institution that is promoting water as a human right, supporting or investing in using tap water instead of bottled water, and also promoting water and sanitation to be a public good. And there is the Swiss additional kind of objective to promote public-public partnerships with international partners. And that's also why we could actually, with financial support of the city of Bern, at the same time develop a water flow diagram for Rio Pardo de Minas in Brazil. What you see here, again, the same diagram, you have much more water available, but the main problem here is the losses through on-site sanitation, and also the direct rejection of the wastewater. I won't go into detail here, but actually what is important is that in Bern we had a lot of data. All data was there, but still for the city it was a really rewarding activity, because it was the first time that wastewater, water, and all the different services put together the data in one picture, and they also realized that actually it's much easier to talk to political people and the general public with it. So actually it triggered that now the city of Bern started to invest in blue-green infrastructure to do something against this combined sewer overflow, and they continue to use this water flow diagram for the annual reporting. And in Rio Pardo de Minas, we had very little data. So we actually started with the first diagram only with assumptions, and then started to have workshops where different actors came in. And now at the end, we ended up not only with this diagram for the city center, but we realized that the agroforestry and mining company have an important stake in the whole area and water, and now have another diagram which looks very different, where we actually see that this is a huge risk of overexploitation. This is only the data based on water rights. So even though the rights would be respected, there is a risk of water overuse in the future. So the process is important. It's not only about the diagram, but also the embedment in a participatory process, as we've seen in Brazil. And to support this process, we have developed kind of a quick guide. This is available online. And together with this quick guide, you have a few other resources. And with that, you can actually, within a half a day, making some basic estimations. And try to talk very fast to be in time. Make a first diagram and then start to discuss that with your stakeholders. At the end, we have developed a tool that actually intuitively and very compactly allows a city or a utility or organization to show different opportunities and challenges related to the SDGs, including inequalities or access to sanitation and water, pollution, reuse, or also collaboration, stakeholder collaboration. So we've developed that in 2020. That's where I started in this community of practice. We presented the first case studies in Stockholm 2021. We then went to Dakar with a kind of a standardized methodology. And now we have this methodology. It's online, it's free, and we support cities around the world to apply this tool in the future and in their projects. And that's also a little bit why I'm here. So in Switzerland, we started to promote it actually as part of city, not only blue communities partnerships like Bern and Rio Pardo, but also city-to-city partnerships. We have two of them. They were presented yesterday, Lausanne-Nouakchott and Lugano-Havassa. And within these partnerships, we believe that having this visual representation can enrich them and can also support the exchange. So with this, I would encourage different organizations to use that and to join us and help us further develop this tool.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and sorry you rushed a little bit. Yeah, water flow diagram is a certainly interesting tool, and congratulations for designing and bringing integrated approach into the perspective. So we look at water, sanitation, solid waste all together, not necessarily in a silo approach. This is really important, and of course it's also it's such a critical area. You can actually then really focus what critical strategic decision needs to be taken, and how you can actually present it to the decision maker. So city can actually really benefit significantly. I will have a question, don't answer now. I wonder how the tool could be also used to address some of the water scarcity issues. In some region it's really critical. maybe you can take that question later. So with that, we are going to move to, we have one online speaker. We're going to move to Kenya. Zaituni Kanenja from Nakuru City, she's on the screen now. Welcome, Zaituni, joining us. So she is she's community development expert, and she's going to talk about Africa's #1 sponge city experience in Nakuru. Screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can be able to hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. So if
Thank you.
Yeah. You can
As
just
introduced.
Go
Sorry?
ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I know I may have an internet problem if I happen to put on the video, so that is why I'm doing without a video. As introduced, I'm Zaituni Kanenje. I work for Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company. Nakuru County is one of the 47 counties in Kenya. And my utility, that is Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company, serves the urban cities, the urban center of Nakuru, only the urban. And that is where we are trying to establish a sponge city town. And we'll want this to be the first sponge city town in Kenya and possibly in Africa. So my water company has the responsibility for providing water and sanitation services to the urban urban centers, urban town of Nakuru. And we have a population of about 533,800. And actually the utility is facing, the town is facing increasing threats to its water supply, because our production is only 45,000 cubic meters per day against a demand of 70,000 cubic meters per day. That tells us that there is really a big challenge, which as a utility we need to work on how best we can be able to save more water to be able to reach our population. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in our case, we have the sponge city as the presenters who presented earlier before me mentioned. And when we talk about the sponge city, we are aware of the challenges that are facing, especially the urban areas. And for us, our focus is on the 3 Rs. That is looking at within the city, how we can be able to retain water, how we can be able to recharge, and how we can be able to reuse the same water based on the challenges that we have seen, whereby we have increased we have increased we have increased shallow infiltration and all those other challenges that are facing the cities based on the climate change. Next slide. Yeah, so our aim is to use the urban infrastructure, that is the roads, the pavements, the roofs, the fields, as a catchment area for harvesting water, so that we are able to retain the same water and redirect runoff to infiltrate the aquifer, that is for recharge, for continued use in towns or cities, on cities. This concept is largely, as mentioned, on the 3 Rs, and this is because as a city, our population is really growing. Our production is really low. That is, we are not able to serve almost half of the population of the city. Next slide, please. So some of the challenges that we have in regards to water supply as a water company is population growth. Of course, the birth surplus, the city migrations, people moving into the city, climate change, that is the high temperature, heavy rainfalls, which is leading to land degradation and population, whereby we have more water loss more water loss, that is the runoff, which is really dwindling the resources. And at the end, we have the decreased water availability to be able to serve the demand. And with that, we are not able to reach our SDG, because as a water utility, our aim is to be able to serve people within our area of service. And if we cannot be able to conserve the resource that we have, we are not able to reach the sustainable development goals. Next slide, please. Yeah, as you can see, these are some of the issues that we are talking about. There you can see how people are really queuing with jerry cans to get water, and at the same time, there is water that is flowing, that is flooding and all that. As we can also see, we see really there is very poor conservation within our area of service, and these are actually pictures taken within Nakuru. Next, please. So for that, what are we looking at? We are looking at the ways on how we can be able to have additional alternative resources for water provision and regulations. We are looking at green infrastructure to improve water recharge and filtrations. We are looking at integration of water management and urban planning. Since without proper coordination from the county, national level, national government, we are not able to work out these. So as a water company, we are actually coming in to take lead to see how we can be able to bring together different departments on all that, so that we can have regulations towards climate reservations. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so when we talk about Sponge City, we are talking about, so Sponge is like a mattress, of course. We are looking at how we can be able to harvest water from the road runoff for peri-urban farming, because most of our roads, as we can see, especially in the urban, they are not they are tarmacked, and we are looking at how we can be able to conserve that water, looking at how we can be able to collect water from the rooftops, especially say from government buildings and even residential houses, schools, and all that. We are looking at green areas for increased infiltration and purifications, bridge across season stream to check and store seasonal floods, reuse grey water in urban vegetables instead of that water going to waste. As a utility, we are looking at how we can be able to have the reuse cycle, porous paving for increased infiltrations, trees. We are also focusing on planting as many trees as possible to provide shades and reduce the runoff. Also use stormwater farm from groundwater for recharge, and also the green rooftops. Yeah, next, please. Yeah, so as we can see on the left, that is those are some of the quarries. First, we can see some of the blockages, and we can see the quarries due to flooding and all that, since they've not been that conservation. Then on your right, we are working on how to ensure that we can be able to harvest water from the rooftops, and also using the same after harvesting water, how we can be able to reuse. We are trying to see how we can be able to engage even the communities, to be able, especially the women and all that, to be able to have to have the at least be able to have a plant vegetables and all that within their homesteads. Next slide, please. Yeah, so those are some of the interventions that we are trying to apply for the concept of sponge city. And with this, we are working very closely with the communities, and especially the women, whereby they can have kitchen gardenings within their homes. We are also promoting harvesting. As you can see, that is one of the house at household level, and also this being an urban setup, most of the households, of course, they are rental houses and all that. We do engage the plot owners and all that to make sure that they have gutter, they put gutters so that to ensure that even if the utility is not able to provide them with piped water, but they can be able to get rainwater harvested, and at the same time be able to use the same water for uh, for planting vegetables and all that. And with this concept, we are promoting the cities whereby we are engaging in tree planting initiatives, both at schools and mainly engaging the school going kids, mainly the primary, which can be able to engage the same exercise even when they go back home. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I conclude, that is what you can see is the check dam, which is installed resulting from the culvert. And this is to reinstall the original level within a year, and excess water diverted to upon vegetable farming, which is down here, like on your right. We are encouraging the communities around to be able to reinstall the same water in the pond for vegetable farming. Yeah. Next, and next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, some of the approaches that we are doing is ensuring that citizen platform, that is engaging people to understand what are these key challenges that are facing everyone, because as utility we can not be able to do this on our own. So we ensure that there is citizen platform whereby we engage people to know the challenges. After that, we engage them in doing demonstrations on how best they can be able to harvest water and be able to form, say, community groups or income generating activities that at the end of it, they can be able to, say, for example, after growing vegetables, they can be able to sell and get some money out of it, instead of depending only on the utilities to provide water, which, as it is for Nakuru Water, our water is mainly groundwater, and it is not enough to serve our city. Yeah, so basically the approach is engaging the public, engaging the municipality, engaging all the departments within the county to ensure that when we talk about climate change, we talk about conserving the environment, it is our responsibility as a whole and not only for the water service providers. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is now, as I mentioned, about the frequent engagement of the public, having inclusive, everyone should be responsible. Community participation is really important. Then also engaging the locals, that is local artisans, the small businesses, when it comes to, for example, for this little water that you are able to conserve, what is it that you can be able to do with it, and how best we can be able to utilize whatever we have. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Zeytuni. Please stay with us. We might have some questions to you also. Thanks a lot for really taking us through the practical example. I know this practice has been going on and supported by VEI for quite some time now, so congratulations on good work. And also, I think it's really important to sort of underline, so the water harvesting and reusing for basically growing food, planting more trees, and also making sure that the communities and part and parcel of this process, and bringing actually community and people at the center of this, the resilience building this in your city. So thanks a lot again for your contribution. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Pinar Chaglin, She's working with the UN Habitat headquarters, planning, finance and economy section. Pinar is going to tell us and take us through the work UN Habitat doing, and some of which related to some of this discussion we had, but also maybe taking us through how planning can help, especially utilities, to think about, and as I think it's going to be related a little bit to Dorothy's also presentation, to bring integrated approach into the perspective, and if we can help utilities to understand their infrastructure need and investment. So I'll leave it to you here.
Thank you. And I think my presentation, I'm happy that it is at the very end, because it will be complementary to the other 3 presentations that we have listened, both in terms of like the design practices of including the water into the design practices, but integrated approach, and the last presentation of how we integrate all these approaches into the planning. So I will start with a few examples that we are working in my team in the planning, finance and economy section of UN Habitat, how we approach the urban and territorial planning and with the focus of water. So I think we all know why water is a very fundamental element now with the impact of climate change in our cities. And how it brings us different opportunities in terms of planning and design, but how cities can function if they consider water into their long-term planning. It can be used as a climate mitigation measures or healthy food production, and it can improve the urban health, promote non-motorized motorized mobility, and also promote local economic development in the cities. A few examples I would like to show you how we try to include water into our planning and design proposals. One of them is the river generation. It is important because river generation can be used as a leverage for slum upgrading in many cities. We are working in Nairobi Rivers program together with the local government in Nairobi and the county governments, and we work in several rivers in Nairobi for the regeneration, including the communities. So we follow the participatory approach. Another example how we include the water is more at the territorial level. This is a project, again in Kenya, Go Blue project, and the main focus is enhancing the blue economy into the territorial approach. So promoting more like livelihoods while protecting the marine environment. Another example is from a campsite. This is like a huge campsite in Kenya, Kalo Bay. UN Habitat has been working for long years in designing and planning of these campsites. How we include water bodies and water systems into the campsite planning, and what the physical conditions can be improved in a campsite, in a refugee site, by including the green and water blue infrastructure. And another example is from the Saudi Arabia, a city called Al-Ahsa, how the blue and green network can be integrated into the city-wide strategies, like a city approach, and how it can enhance the resilient city and connected city objectives of Al-Asa, and how these can be interlinked with the development zones in the city, but also the transport corridors of the city. So more layers integrated in terms of urban planning here together with the blue and green infrastructure. So As a result, what I want to highlight is what we are trying to do in UN Habitat, in our section, in our team, is from more like siloed approach to the integrated planning approach. Instead of sectoral plans, we would like to look through a holistic perspective into the planning and then combine all these layers and come to a more like the holistic, complementary, comprehensive results. So what integrated planning means for us, yes, it is the sector and integration, but also different scales can be integrated. So look at the regional, metropolitan city and the neighborhood city scales all together, but also not in terms of like the physical planning, but integrating physical planning with the legislation and the economy. And then when we come to the implementation, this is the real challenge for the cities and how we can help cities, governments to implement these planning decisions. So we are trying to develop some kind of like the tools and new methodologies to facilitate the implementation. And here I would like to also go a little bit into the service provision side. So we call it capital investment planning, but it is not just any capital investment planning. We are trying to develop a methodology for capital investment planning where we align it with the special plans. So what we are trying to do is, yes, every city has a plan. This is quite like what we are seeing in most of the countries is quite land use planning style plan. But what we are saying that to have more efficient decision making, you need to shift towards more strategic planning. So to do that, yes, you analyze your existing conditions, you look at your existing plans, future plans, and then you identify your needs and then translate these needs to the responses. What kind of responses? What is the vision of the city? What kind of scenarios you are building in a city? And then the real challenge is, up to this point, many cities are capable of doing it, but then they don't know how to translate these visions, these scenarios into implementable actions. So this is where we are trying to provide technical support to the cities, and then we identify the projects. So translate the plans into the projects. We create a project list for them. And then after you have this project list, you don't have budget to implement all of them. It means that you don't have budget to implement your plan. So you have to prioritize. You have to know where to start, when to start. So actually, by looking answers to all these questions, what to do, where, when, and how to finance it, we implement this process. Yes, you have the special database, you develop it, and then you identify infrastructure deficit areas. This includes the water, sewer, solid waste, electricity, and the drainage system, many other. And then you have the special strategy, you have the special plan, you combine all of them, and then you identify the projects. And then you assess your finances, like internal, but also external finances. This can be like own source revenues, but also the grants, loans, bonds, and PPPs. And based on that, you prioritize your projects. But this prioritization, in that criteria, you don't only consider bankability of the project, but you try to align it with the special plans. So if you have some strategy on the special plans, like the development corridors, development zone, regeneration areas, some economic activities, then you can prioritize the infrastructure project that can support realization of that vision in the strategic plan. And then you compound all these like the small projects in one area to create a bigger impact in the cities. And I will like to go through one specific example to make it more like a concrete and understandable. We are working in Tajikistan, a small city called Korok, in between the high mountains at 2,000 meters above sea level. And it has like many hazard conditions they are dealing with, including the flooding, but also the rockfalls, avalanches, earthquakes, erosion, etc. And so we developed an approach of assessing these hazards. You see here the flooding figures, the groundwater, but also the overground water floodings. And then you try to analyze the population distribution in the city, but also the future population distribution in the city. Here you see all the water system on the left side where there are deficits in the water system and there are oversupplies in the water system. Where are the water sources, which streams they are using, and the reservoirs, boreholes, the entire water system of the city to understand. And then we try to understand the capacity of the existing water network on the right side. So where you see the darker color, the water network has more capacity to supply, and where there are lighter color, the supply is less. So by looking at this as an urban planner, you can easily decide where you can locate the future population in the city. So you can align this infrastructure with your urban plans and strategies easily. And so in our analysis, we do analysis for many sectors, but also the utility infrastructure. This is a very important point because in many cities, when they do planning, they don't consider the utility infrastructure. They don't integrate it into their the planning. They only look at the planning as a zoning activity, a land use activity, and maybe the density distribution. But actually, the utility infrastructure can play a major role in your decision making in the city. And then we develop these responses, as I said before, and where exactly you can improve your utility infrastructure for water, irrigation, solid waste service system, and then what kind of coordination and collaboration is needed for that. And then you create an integrated strategic plan for a city, and you need to translate all these colors, points, lines into a project. You create a list of the projects, and then you create the multi-criteria assessments based on your special plan, and then you run this assessment, and then you have the prioritization of the project. So you know exactly where, in this year, in 3 years, in 5 years, what kind of investment you can make depending on your budget. So you fit all these projects in your budget, annual budget. And as a result, you can see in this map, we can actually see easily where these investments are prioritized based on our strategic plan. So this is very helpful for the local governments to understand the development of the city, where they need to provide better services, better utility services, but also for donors and for investors, where exactly they need to go and invest in the city, and what kind of synergy the city can create by accommodating more than one sector, one type of investments in one area. So the real regeneration and implementation can happen in the cities this way. And this is a little bit like the repetition of the process that we follow, but you need to have a strategic plan, and then you translate it into the actions, and then you prioritize them, and then you fit it into your budget, and you create area-based development program for the cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we actually have good 20 minutes, about 20 minutes for question and answer. Thank you very much, Pinar, for also taking us through the UN Habitat approach and looking at how we can actually help utilities to better understand cities, their growing perspective. A lot of developing country cities continue to grow. There is no sort of end to that. But we really need to understand how that growth is happening, which direction is going, and importantly, how our service provider are going to cope with that sort of direction and growth, and accordingly plan their infrastructure investment. And thank you very much. And now we can have, yes, now I can see on the screen 19 minutes exactly. We have a time. So is there any questions? We can, maybe are you happy there, or you like to sit on that side? Okay. Seems like everyone is happy. I'm going to give you mine. So at least now you can use that mic as well. I think you can use those one as well. So if there is any questions, so we can, yes, Simon, go ahead, please.
My name is Simon Veenstra. I'm from the Fides International Group in the Netherlands. I have been working for 35 years in WOPs. And my question is to you, Emre.
To me?
Yes, because
Okay.
I heard 3 inspiring stories from the academia, Dorothy, from you and Habitat, more or less focusing on the local government to structure and organize the planning in a coherent manner. I heard from Dan a lot of synergies about the role of water in the city. Now, our water operator partnerships.
But please don't forget also Zaitouni, she's
Zaitouni,
gone.
yeah. Yes, well, Zaitouni is maybe yeah, I'll come to that. We have a challenge to make water utilities work according to what they have to do. Bring water to people. And we are not yet finished. We even heard from New York that the UN SDG 6 agenda will not be reached. Now, I hear today and yesterday that our job is much bigger. We are not only the water service providers, we are also dealing with climate change, dealing with sanitation. We have to incorporate urban planning. We nearly become, according to Zaitouni, also agriculturalists, because we are planting and vegetable growth and so on and so on. What is the mission for GWOPA in the future? Do you think that GWOPA, promoting WOPs, will take on board all these extended areas, nature conservation, climate change, integrated water management, urban planning, sanitation? Can you handle all this?
Thank you very much. It's a rather difficult question. I need to talk to my boss before I say anything. So is there any more questions? I'll maybe try to answer some way, but maybe there might be more questions. So you can basically also speak in other languages, French or Spanish, and we need to just have a headset. I don't know if someone likes to speak in other language as well.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is
yourself also. Yeah.
My name is Thomas Odongo. I'm from Kenya, Kisumu City. I work for a water utility, and indeed it appears our role is becoming much bigger. And the question is, can we handle? But I really like the idea of water retention and sponge cities. But looking at our city, for example, the infrastructure is already developed. We have stormwater drainages, which are directed to the lake. There are no green spaces. So does this apply to new cities, or even the old cities can be redesigned? But that's a lot of work that needs the government. The utility can only take a role, but as a catalyst. But in terms of redesigning the infrastructure and creating green spaces, I think that would be a tall order for utilities. So would this apply for old cities like Kisumu, or we are looking at new cities? Thank you.
I hope your question is not to me, like Simon, you're asking to the presenter, or if you like to just comment, that's also fine. Dorothy, you want to go ahead?
No, I was rushing through my presentation, but I think the example of Bern is exactly showing how the wastewater utility in this case was the catalyst. So they started to draw this water flow diagram with us, where for the first time they showed the different implications, right, for water supply, the reservoirs, the pollution side, and so on, in a way that they actually could convince them on a city level that something has to be done. And the city of Bern, I mean, even a city that is not new, it continuously evolves, and whenever you build something, you can build it differently. And in Bern, also, we have population growth in Switzerland, so the whole area now, a neighborhood area, it's now designed as this sponge city as a result of this analysis. And I think taking and also answering to Simon, being a catalyst for something bigger, I think is something that is feasible for an operator.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe if there's one more. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much to all the presenters. My name is Irene Gunjiri from Strathmore University, Kenya. And to the presenter on UN Habitat and the efforts that you're making for river restoration, I would like to know, in connection to the question that was asked, what are you doing, or what's the plan? Because one of the rivers that you're regenerating is the Nairobi River, and the issue with Nairobi River is actually sanitation, because of the informal settlements that discharge the effluents into the river. So restoration will not only be about removing solid waste, it's also going back and looking at how sanitation is working out, and that's how we have a sustainable solution. I would just like to hear more about the plan that is in place, if at all, and yeah, just to hear more about that.
Thank you, but please don't only blame informal settlements. There are other also discharging probably, so let's put it that way.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's
not
also effluent from factories.
Yes.
And also
that probably is more poisonous than.
Yeah, septic tanks sometimes discharge there. Yeah.
Maybe we can take a round. Pinar, you want to go?
Yes, my answer will be very short, actually. So in general, at the theoretical level, the approach is integrated approach again. So it is not only about cleaning the solid waste into the river, but also preventing the pollution and many other aspects. And the plan is using the nature-based solutions also, together with the community, with a participatory approach, using the nature-based solutions. But I can contact you to my colleagues working in that project if you would like to learn more about the future plans of the project and where they are at right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Aquí.
Go ahead.
Hola.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Voy a preguntar en español. Bueno, mi nombre es Julio César García. Trabajo en empresas públicas de Medellín, Colombia. Creo que las presentaciones son excelentes, felicitaciones. Soluciones de ingeniería, de planeación. Pienso que la principal pregunta para todos nosotros es sobre cómo financiar estas soluciones, porque cuando los sistemas se sostienen con lo que pagan los usuarios, las tarifas, realmente la tarifa no es capaz de sostener estas soluciones integradas. Entonces, ¿cómo resolver el problema financiero?
Mi respuesta es en inglés, pero entendió la pregunta. I heard in another session today that there was also a need for new ways to evaluate projects and to see like these kind of projects. For sure, they are more expensive, only just well, bringing all the people together to make these projects happen. But they create a lot of value as well, especially also for the environment, which is not incorporated in the feasibility right now. So if there's methods where these kind of impacts also can be labeled as a financial positive impact, then maybe these kind of things will help, but it will take a lot of more development, I think, before we can see the bigger picture also financially with this kind of projects.
Thank you very much. Thank you also, Dan, for helping to us better understand.
Can I also
go ahead,
try to
please.
answer? Yes, as I try to also explain in my presentation, the financing is the main issue for the cities. It is very clear that you cannot finance all the projects, so you cannot implement your plan. Plan is really imaginary, like the idealistic future picture that we are creating. But it is impossible for us to implement all of it because of finance. That is why prioritization is important. That is why you need a strategic plan, strategic decisions. What do you want to achieve in your city in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? You need to know it so that you can prioritize those areas or those sectors. Or if you have a specific target, to achieve that target, you can prioritize the projects contributing to that target. This is what we are advocating for, because it is impossible to finance everything that you want to finance.
So we start with the biteable part. So go ahead, please. So.
Hola, mi nombre es Enzo, de Córdoba, Argentina. Quería preguntarle a los tres algo muy importante en saber los tiempos. ¿Hace cuánto tiempo trabajan en sus ciudades para poder lograr lo que están logrando? You understand? How many time? How long? How long time?
Vale, claro. So I think it was like a project which took like, I think 10 years, 10 años. It took a lot of time. When I started studying, there were only plans. So we were always told as students, this is the project you have to see. But it wasn't there, and it took a lot of time. I went out of Nijmegen, it wasn't ready yet, and now, since like, I think 5 years, now it's ready. So it takes a lot of time, yeah, from planning to eventually finishing it, and also making sure that the island also has different functions, that people really use it. That takes a lot of the time as well for people to really see it as a part of the city and use it for, well, events and stuff like this, so. Yeah.
Just a small comment. I mean, I think obviously it becomes very complex and many more actors have to be integrated. You have to have more discussion. I don't think that projects like sponge cities can be only implemented and driven by operators, utilities, and financed by them. So I think that you have to accept that you need a longer-term perspective because this dialogue and different criteria, strategizing takes more time, and I think this approach of having a strategic plan has to be adopted somehow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in case of Nakuru, it's been 10 years, our good partner WEI is supporting and working together, and it involves many other sort of stakeholders. It's not really very like short-term objective, so it takes certainly time to make things happen. Anywhere else, there is any other comment? Yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much for the presentations. Very good. My name is Hartwig Kramer. I was in charge of global water monitoring in UNEP for 9 years and founder of the Water Quality Alliance, and since half a year I'm in UNITAC, the United Nations Innovation and Technology Accelerator for Cities, so that's Habitat. What I heard so far was impressive, but also very theoretical to a certain extent. And what I heard was really hitting the ground running was from Saituni in the city of Nakuru, which I know very well, having been in Kenya for years. What do you think, and irrespective of who wants to give an answer, you need in form of social process to generate ownership in your water body, in your informal settlement, to address issues of water and not just quantity, but also quality? And what role will data play in the whole game and digital transformation?
Anyone wants to take it? Go ahead.
I have a very short answer. I mean, the basis is that you have to create an understanding, because data is one thing, but then putting that into pictures that other people can understand, the communities, politicians, and so on, is key. So pictures, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe to add to that, it's for us as a company to get people involved is really project for project is every time a different puzzle again to show them how the measurements we want to take, how it affects them positively and how their city gets affected. But it's, at one place they're really for example, using less space for cars, but at other places our plans, they will not continue because the people are not ready for that. So it's like every time, every project is still it's still a puzzle, but at least new images help. We also try to imagine a world without cars sometimes with a new project we are doing, so we can show people if you just go by bus or by bike and you accept like maybe you have to take a little longer for your journey. But you get this in return. You get a park in front of your area, your kids can play in front of your doorstep. Seeing that helps a lot as well. Yeah.
We have last 2 minutes. If anyone else wants to take mic. No? I know. Oh, you yes, my good colleague is there. She's going to talk. Yeah, I still need to go to the train station, actually. So thank you very much. I know I was asked a big question. I'll catch up with you later. No, let me just put it this way. I think it's... I can't help to say something. So basically, some of these things is my personal feeling as well. I think it's still traditionally lots of utilities have been too much focused on to make sure we get a drinking water. Like this is really #1 priority. Everyone is, of course, is essential. I can certainly understand, and it's slowly and gradually they start also looking at what also comes out. You know, we use the water, then also comes out something like wastewater. So how do we deal those wastewater part? So, but still in the global south is very little focus on what to do with the wastewater. Some utilities don't necessarily have mandate. There's different issues in the governance system. And because its focus is really to get the water, that's really #1. And then now we are adding another elements of thinking water and using water as a leverage for other issues, you know, looking at the climate change, looking at good public spaces, looking at how you can actually support food growing and all of those things. And of course, these are may not be necessarily part of the utility's responsibility, but they shouldn't be also working in silo. They should be also working a little bit more maybe with the cities, the planning department, development department, other stakeholder, to see how, you know, the water being at the center, how everyone actually make best use of every drop to build the resilience in the city. So what are we going to do as GWOPA? So we are certainly interested to see our next water operator partnership. They are, you know, picking up, partner picking and choosing some of these topics within the partnership to bring different actually partner on board to the WOP practice, to actually also look at them and help the utility to understand financing, to understand how water works, you know, go outside of their cubicle area a little bit, the way Dan said, to really work and use some of these decision support mechanism Dorothy presented and Pinar presented something so that can actually also engage them in other discussions. So we hope that at least we can trigger this discussion, and then we also bring utilities a little bit closer to those perspectives. That's our objective.
In that case, GVOPA is very much well placed in UN Habitat.
Thank you. Thank you. A big applause to everyone. Oh. Yeah.